Hi, I'm LJ Williamson with Giga Granada Hills, and today we're here with Kelly Lord, a candidate for Council District 12. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you, Linda. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could introduce yourself to the voters and let them know a little bit about your background and your qualifications and why you're running.
A little bit of background is currently, as I have for the last 5 years, I've been serving on Northridge East Neighborhood Council. I've served in a number of capacities there, both president and now currently treasurer. And that experience has afforded me an opportunity to be in a number of different committees that the neighborhood councils do throughout the city of LA. Everything from plan check to, well, recently, the budget advocate. And these have allowed all of us, not just myself, but the neighborhood council, to take part in our city government. Some time ago, in our Northridge East Neighborhood Council, because that's where we're from, we looked around for other candidates who might be, or people willing to step up and be candidates for CD12. We saw some issues going on with the city that we were simply concerned that the present culture of decision-making could use some help, could use some assistance. And from that, we put together a number of people who decided to run for city council, and I'm one of those.
Okay. So tell me, what do you feel the issues specifically facing Council District 12, our area, the ones that are most important to you and the ones that you want to go downtown and represent?
Well, I'll answer your question kind of in a backwards way. The looming crisis for the city of LA is a budget deficit. So regardless of what we talk about or what we want to do here in the Northwest Valley, it's going to be affected by what's happening down in LA. We need a strong advocate for this part of the valley. We have some tough decisions to be made. There's a number of different departments that have come out and talked about their budget deficit. We haven't seen too much resolution down in the city council as far as resolving some of those. Serving on the Budget Advocate Committee, you saw some of the process in which the budget was made, some of the decisions made, the priorities. And oftentimes there was almost a decision that was based upon the personality before the principles. In other words, what was going to keep their department around rather than the principle of good governmentship for the city of LA. Here in the Valley, what we're looking at, especially at some of the Northridge, Chatsworth, and out through the West Hills area, is local control. How much do us, as sovereign citizens of this country, have in terms of local control? If we see things happening, do we have control over that, or is it all coming from the city of LA? So what we were looking at was a number of advocates for this particular council district, that we want a strong, vocal advocate that brings the concerns of our people to the forefront.
Okay. And what do you think, can you name a couple of those concerns specifically? Like what are the things that you feel that need the most attention? What are primarily?
Probably the primary, if you will, would be transparency. Right now, a lot of us look towards government and have an incredible amount of distrust. How does it work? How are decisions being made? Oftentimes we're not included in that decision process. So transparency would probably be one of the main priorities. In other words, to have a city council district where, well, if you have a community room, that it's adjacent to the city council office rather than it being separated from, where the neighborhood councils are actively solicited to be involved in the decision-making process so they see what it takes to make these type of decisions. Transparency, everything from what the city council office can and cannot do. There are some things that are under the prerogative of the city council that we often don't hear about. You know, how land use decisions are made oftentimes come from the city councilmen themselves rather than the planning. They have an incredible amount of effect on it. So transparency, how our government is run. And that requires not only outreach from the city council, but also requires us as neighbors, as stakeholders, to be involved in that decision process. The other thing on the larger picture of the city of LA, we need to refocus ourselves on our core services. That's protection, safety, and public infrastructure, like the streets and the roads. And that's decisions that we're going to have to face over the next 5 and 10 years, is how we're going to spend our money. There is less money. And thirdly, is probably that feeds off of that, is resolving the budget. If we don't resolve the budget and the looming pension deficits we're going to have, it's going to affect everything we do, from general services to our police to our fire, and those things that we've come to depend upon.
Okay. Now, give me a little bit of, just tell me why should I vote for you as opposed to anyone else in this race?
Well, there are a number of good people in this race. Probably the one issue to look at is that in my life, I value principles before personality. And for many people who live this elected life, that's a foreign concept. So what I'm going to do is bring the advocacy of the neighborhood councils, which of course I'm a product of, also the well-being of our CD12. That is what I'm about. I'm not concerned if I disagree with you. I'm not concerned if someone disagrees with me. What I want is clarity in the issues. If you look down in LA, in the horseshoe as they call it, where all the city council people sit, rarely do you hear any disagreement. Why is that? Why isn't it more like something where people discuss issues openly and honestly? It's because they're constantly choosing what's good for them in terms of their re-election rather than the principles of good city government. So what I'm interested in doing is bringing back that fight where we put our principles before our personalities.
Okay. So before we started the interview, you were talking about kind of a chain of command that's been going. And tell me, what do you think are the problems associated with that? What's falling through the cracks and not getting the attention?
When you have a city council office, way back, starting with Wilkinson, whose chief of staff became the next city councilman, Bernstein, who his chief of staff became the next city councilman, and now we're looking at the possibility of that happening again, that they have developed ways in which the office works. And oftentimes, that is not necessarily for the good of the people in which the office is for. So we need, to quote a tired cliche, fresh blood. We need a new set of eyes. We need the people to stand up and be part of this process rather than be kept at a distance.
Okay, well, just to be a devil's advocate for a
Yes.
moment, I mean, wouldn't you say that someone who has that inside track, that inside knowledge of how things work and all the know-how and the connections and everything, wouldn't you say that a person like that, like we're let's call a spade, we're talking about Mitch Englander, would have an advantage about being able to hit the ground running, having those connections, having that hands-on know-how?
Okay, look at what you're saying, and this is, I hear about this. Hit the ground running. Running to what? I mean, if you're running down the same track, you know, essentially expecting a different result, that's the definition of insanity. If we are electing the same people to make new decisions about problems that they perhaps inadvertently have been involved in, do we expect a different response? If you look, I remember being on the Budget Advocate Committee, and what we wanted to know was in terms of who signed off on all the pensions, who signed off on all the contracts, what person that was. Now, that wasn't, again, to pursue them for blame, but we wanted to understand, as neighborhood council people, as people involved in the budget process, are these same people going to make the decisions again? Because if you have the same mind working, the same elements going into that, we're going to have the same results. So we have to be all clear that if you have a pattern of behavior that you don't actively try to change, you will continue to make the same mistakes. So hit the ground running, the same relationships. He's well known, that's been his job. But I'm not sure necessarily that's for the best of the community to have someone whose job for the last 8 years has been to develop relationships. My job for the last 8 years was as a property manager, as a real estate agent, as getting out and earning a living, as employing people. That's what my job has been. My job has been volunteering my time at nights, at weekends, in between those other times, to work in the community, to be of service, because we feel that that's what we're supposed to be. As citizens of LA, part of our obligation, because we have it so well, is to give back in terms of community involvement. If you look at the other candidates, look at to what their relationships are. In some of these cases, these relationships are advocating various positions down in City Hall that are part of the problem. So essentially, you're going to ask someone to go against their family. You're going to ask someone to stand up over Thanksgiving dinner and say, no, I disagree with you because it's not good for some people I know. So I'm going to go against you. Think it through, those things you say, because they're excellent, because a lot of us are afraid to change. We're afraid to find someone new to take us down a path that actually would be better for us.
Okay, let me ask you a couple of real specific policy points. Like, big concerns in this area are land use, specific to Granada Hills now, land use and development, and the Sunshine Canyon.
Sunshine Canyon is an excellent example where you have a need by the city, and that's refuge, and how you balance that against the well-being of the people around it. How you do that. It's not just a one answer. It's rather a number of different remedies that you look at to mediate those concerns. And land use here in Granada Hills, there's a group homes, there's a number of things that are on things. Land use issues also go back to, if you look at the core of our values here in this country is based upon private property. That's where our rights come from. It's not a one answer to this situation. Old Granada Hills, Maria Fisk, some other people have been very in the forefront of this. And those are the type of people we should look at as some of the remedies for the situation.
Okay. Now, as far as Sunshine Canyon, a lot of people in this area have a lot of complaints about violations from that. How would you specifically, what remedies do you think need to be undertaken to improve that particular situation?
I'm not an engineer. For me to begin to sit here in this interview and come up with, I think, our remedies for that is a disservice not only to myself, but to the other people out there who are working very hard at this. If you've been to some of the meetings with up in Granada Hills North and what they look at, you'll see the earnestness in those stakeholders, in those people involved. My first thought would be look towards them as to those remedies. Sunshine, of course, is a business. It wants to maintain itself. It does not want to pollute the people around it. However, it is trying to catch up with some of the behavior of the past. So it's not going to be something solved overnight. We have to look at not only what we're doing with our refuse, but how we can mitigate any potential problem from Sunshine.
Okay, you've got 1 minute, and you've got a short attention span audience with their finger on the mouse, ready to click over to something else. What's the one thing you need to tell those people? Go.
Okay, what I would tell these people is vote. Get out and vote this March 8th. But not only here in City 12, Council District 12, but throughout the city of LA. We have some incredible things on the ballot, some of which the LA City Council at this time thinks are remedies. I want you to vote. That was probably the most strongest thing I could say. And also the neighborhood councils, your involvement is critical. You need to get out, you need to support people like myself, about some of the other candidates, Brad Smith. Whoever is from the neighborhood council, you need to get out and support them. This is how we change things. We start from here and we go forward.
Okay, but why do we vote for you as opposed to anyone else?
Damn, see, I keep forgetting to mention myself.
So just vote for anyone, people. No, it doesn't matter.
This is what I'm going to bring. My focus is going to be, number one, on providing the support to the neighborhood councils. So they're truly going to be the backbone of this city as we go over the next 5 to 10 years. You're going to vote for me because I'll be a strong advocate, not only here in the cities of Northridge, Granada Hills, West Hills, Winnetka, Reseda, but also down in LA. In the Horseshoe, you need someone who's not afraid to offend people, who's not afraid to criticize, who can take our needs to the city. Is that better?
Yeah.
I'm not used to talking about myself. That's one of the drawbacks
you better
of
get used to it.
being Catholic.